The notary set her pouch on my dining table and popped the flap like a tiny thunderclap. She wore a gray cardigan and a look that said she'd seen families argue without raising their voices. Taryn, my daughter-in-law, had her pen poised before the stamp even showed its round brass face. Brent, my son, slid a glossy power of attorney toward me like a winning card in a bad game. Pastor Rick bowed his head, hands folded, waiting for me to ask for grace. Steam from the pot roast fogged the chandelier glass. Somewhere under the clatter, the notary's stamp made its first small thump click against the pad. 3 days earlier, I was on the living room carpet in Marion, Iowa, Cedar Rapids side of town, playing Candyland with my 5-year-old grandson, Aiden. The card he drew had a peppermint on it. He moved his little green man 2 squares and grinned at me like we'd invented victory. "Mom says when you're gone, the house is ours," he chirped, bright as a school song. I reset the board and smiled like I was just an old man who mixed up the pieces. "Your move, buddy." He didn't mean harm. 5-year-olds repeat what the room teaches. Mine used to repeat the names of ball players. Now kids repeat conversations half heard over a kitchen sink. I stood and felt my knees complain the way 71-year-old knees do. I started coffee in the old percolator, the kind that makes a hollow knock as it heats. The AM radio on the counter hissed with a Hawkeyes pregame show. Hy-Vee sacks rustled near the door where I'd set them down. Outside, snow squeaked on the front walk if you stepped just right. My late wife Ruth kept this brick ranch tighter than a drum. I've tried to keep it that way since the derecho took a limb off the maple and every neighbor became a roofing expert. Brent and Taryn had been hunting around the word downsizing for months. Dad's stair rails would help, Brent would say. Trip hazards, Taryn would add. Looking at my throw rug like it was a hole in a boat. They meant well, I told myself. Or they meant something else. Both can fit in the same sentence if you push. A glossy market evaluation flyer from Colin Pike Realty had appeared in my mail the week before, folded into the penny saver like it snuck in wearing a disguise. I tucked it under a magnet shaped like a corn cob and thought about Ruth's line for salespeople. No thank you and be well. Aiden pushed the red pawn to the gumdrop. He made a trumpet noise with his mouth. Mom says we'll get the house when you go to heaven, he announced, casual as weather. She says it soon. Let's find Queen Frostine, I said, and my voice did not crack. I pulled the deck together, straightened the corners, and did what I learned at the Quaker Oats plant. When your hand shakes, put both hands to the work, and it looks like purpose. When Brent came to pick him up, I asked if he wanted coffee. He had that late afternoon glaze of a man who'd worked but couldn't point to what he'd moved. Rain check, he said. Taryn's making a roast Sunday. We'll bring Aiden and do that paperwork we talked about. Make things easier. Easier for who, I asked, like I was joking. For everyone, he said, and kissed Aiden's hair without looking at me. After they left, I sat at the kitchen table with a yellow note card, the same kind I used to track bearing orders at the plant, and I wrote Aiden's line exactly. I wrote the date, I wrote the time, I wrote Candyland Peppermint 2 squares because details keep your memory honest. My flip phone buzzed on the table, the old green screen lighting up with that stubborn font. A group text popped through from a number I didn't recognize with a little gray circle picture of a woman I'd never met CC'd to me by mistake, time-stamped right there on my flip phone. Kendra Pike, if he signs Sunday, we can pre-list Monday. Below it, a photo I recognized all too well, my front porch afternoon light, slanting across the maple stump the welcome mat Ruth picked because it didn't shed. The caption said, "This angle will sell." It took me a second to realize I'd been CC'd by accident. I pressed the side button the way Lou Ann across the street taught me and saved a screenshot. I printed it on my clattery old inkjet and watched the paper crawl out like the machine was thinking it over. The percolator made that hollow knock. I poured a cup black as a winter ditch and stood by the window while the heat touched my face. Across the street, Lou Ann scraped a windshield with a credit card because she refuses to buy a proper scraper on principle. The radio coughed out an ad for snowblowers that can throw a drift into next week. I thought about calling Brent. I thought about saying everything at once and mixing it into a kind of stew that wouldn't feed anybody. Instead, I stacked the printout under the note card with Aiden's sentence and set both under the sugar bowl where I keep things that matter. Ruth used to tuck recipes there. Paper is paper. It feeds you either way. Taryn texted that evening, "Bring your ID Sunday so we can finish the POA. Kendra might stop by after dessert." There was a smiley face I could feel from my kitchen. I answered with a thumbs up because a man has to choose his tools. I put the phone face down and listened to the old house tick and settle the way houses do after a long day of standing up. I cooked a test pot roast on Saturday to make sure my hand hadn't forgotten Ruth's spice mix, salt, pepper, a little paprika, because she liked color where you don't expect it. The oven door squealed when it opened. I made a note to oil the hinge, then didn't. Some noises remind you you're home. A second message arrived, not to me, but touching me anyway. A market analysis PDF zipped from Kendre Colpike to Brent and Taryn, and by another mistake, Hal Merceri followed them. It had bullet points about my neighborhood and a line that read, "Owner likely to accept pre-inspection Sunday evening." It stamped its own time in the corner, 3:42 p.m., like a witness who couldn't wait to be called. I printed that too and put it under the sugar bowl. I sharpened a pencil. I opened a new note card. I wrote Sunday's date, and I wrote Grace first in block letters because Pastor Rick likes to start any gathering with the right words. I cleaned the dining table. I set out my good plates. I took the high-V sacks out to the garage. I stood under the maple and touched the place where the derecho had torn it and where the saw had made it neat again. There is a feeling in your chest when someone plans around your absence and says it out loud through a child who doesn't even know the shape of absence yet. It doesn't feel like anger, not first. It feels like a draft in a house with all the windows closed. It makes you walk the rooms and test the locks you already know are sturdy. My radio played the end of the game I wasn't really listening to. The percolator knocked a little hollow again. I poured more coffee I didn't need. I pressed my palm to the dining table wood where Ruth's elbows had worn it soft. On Sunday, I told the room we'll see who signs what. And then I went to the closet and took out the good tablecloth and the napkins Ruth ironed when she was mad at me, because that was how she cooled down a hot iron and a straight edge. I set them on the chair by the head of the table. I set out a small glass dish for salt, a small glass dish for pepper, so nobody would have to ask and so I could hear the clink when the spoons went in. I do not like surprises in my own house. I like the sound of a spoon in a dish, the knock of a percolator, the click of a door that latches true. Sunday was coming, the stamp would be ready, and I would be too. I found the yellow tag flapping on my chain-link fence, like a cheap flag in a stiff Iowa wind. Mid-American Energy. Past due notice. Possible disconnect on the 15th. I keep my bills in a shoebox and write the check the day they land, but Taryn had helped last month by moving gas and electric to autopay through her phone. So you can relax, Hal. I kept the tag and the rubber band it came with. Paper beats voice. Lou Ann was out in her robe with the Cedar Rapids Gazette folded under her arm, her gray hair standing up like she'd been electrocuted by coffee. "You get one of those," she called. I held it up. Apparently I don't pay my bills anymore. She crossed the street in house shoes, unconcerned with frost. "Call first. Then go see Tom at Collins Community Credit Union. He's my guy." She fished a yellow legal pad from under the newspaper and pressed it into my hand. Dates, amounts, names. Write it down before your temper edits it. I dialed the number on the tag from my landline. The hold music sounded like someone playing a keyboard in mittens. A woman finally came on and read from a script, "Mr. Mercer. I see your autopay was canceled online on the 4th. It appears a representative." "I don't have representatives," I said. "I have a checkbook." "We can reinstate," she said. "I'll note your account. You'll receive a confirmation letter. Keep it." I keep everything, I said. I wrote 4th autopay canceled, call ref 42719 on Lou Ann's pad and tore off the top page to stick to the fridge. At Collins Community Credit Union, the vestibule smelled like wet wool and copier heat. A coin-counting machine clattered somewhere behind the glass and hiccuped out a handful of change. A sign taped to a candy jar said, "Please limit peppermints to 2. I took one and held it like a talisman. "Mr. Mercer," Tom Alvarez said when he came around the desk. Mid-40s, neat tie, the kind of easy smile that doesn't promise just welcomes. "How can I help today?" "Paper," I said. 60 days of it. I slid the yellow tag and my last statement across. "Something's off." Tom logged in. "We'll print everything and go line by line." He handed me a laminated card. "We can put a verbal password on your profile. Think of a word nobody else would guess." "Gibson 58, I said without thinking. I could see Bob Gibson's wind-up in my head, the way he tucked the ball like a secret and then cut the air in half. Gibson 58, it is, Tom said, typing. We'll also add a trusted contact, someone we can call if we suspect something but can't reach you. They don't have access to your money, their eyes and ears. Lou Ann Becker, I said, spelling it out. Across the street, retired clerk. She has more eyes and ears than the rest of the block. We moved to a little glass office. He spread the printouts like placemats. Here's your normal, he said, tapping a neat trail of Hy-Vee and Casey's receipts and a check to the church. And here's what isn't. 2 Zelle transfers to names I didn't know, $240 and $380. A temporary address change on the profile at 11:19 p.m., reversed 2 days later. 3 ATM withdrawals between 2:10 and 2:14 a.m. from a machine by Casey's on Blair's Ferry. In 9 days, $620 slid out in little Zelle bites, and the ATM took 3 more hits at 2 a.m. Small bites add up. The timestamp 2:12 a.m. glowed like a burn. I sleep, I said. I assume, Tom said. We'll kill this debit card and issue a new one. Pin at the machine, not written anywhere. 2-factor on your online banking text to your device. We can put transaction alerts on anything over $100. What about the names on Zelle, I asked. He shook his head. We see the handles. If it continues, we can file an affidavit. For now, lock it down. I'll print you a summary and a letter you can show your attorney. I didn't say I didn't have an attorney. I nodded like a man who would by lunch. On the way home, Mercy's clinic called to remind me about my blood pressure check. Taryn answered on the second ring because she'd somehow added herself to my contact sheet. We'll be there, she told them. He gets confused. I can make my own appointments, I said after she hung up. It's easier this way, she said, grabbing her coat, and we can talk about Sunday paperwork. We sat in the waiting room under a poster of a smiling couple walking through leaves that looked like confetti. Taryn leaned toward the nurse when my name was called. He's been repeating himself, she said, clipboard ready. The nurse smiled at me instead. What's your full name and date of birth, Mr. Mercer? I told her. She checked a box. In the exam room, the cuff squeezed, then hissed. Dr. Ortiz came in with a tablet and a face that said she'd spent her morning convincing men like me that change and decline aren't synonyms. Any falls, she asked. No. Any trouble with day-to-day? I cook, I shovel, I pay my bills. I pulled the yellow tag from my pocket and set it on the table. This tried to tell me otherwise. We fixed it. Taryn jumped in. He needs someone to oversee. Let me finish with Mr. Mercer, Dr. Ortiz said mildly. She ran through orientation questions. Month, year, where are we, who's the president? She asked me to count back by sevens. I did slow and steady the way a man stacks boards so they don't fall. She typed. Vitals are fine. Cognitively intact. I'm putting oriented ×3 in your chart. I'm also noting that communication should go through you unless you specify otherwise. I specify otherwise when I decided, I said. At checkout, the clerk tried to add a primary contact. Taryn spelled her name. I slid my ID across and tapped the counter. Leave mine at the top, I said. The clerk looked at Dr. Ortiz's note, nodded, and circled my phone number in green. Outside, the air nipped my ears like a crabby ant. In the car, Taryn blew out a breath hard enough to fog the windshield. We're on the same team, Hal. Sunday will make it official. I lined up a notary. Good, I said. I like official. She took that as consent, sometimes calm as a mirror. Back home, I laid Tom's prints on the table and wrote on Lou Ann's pad Zelle, $240, $380, temp address change, 11:19 p.m. ATM Casey's 210 or 2:14 a.m. New debit, 2-factor, alerts, Gibson, 58, trusted Lou Ann. The pen dug a groove. The groove felt like a path. Aiden's little green Candyland pawn sat where he'd left it on the coffee table. I set it on the yellow pad like a paperweight, a reminder of whose mouth had carried whose plan into the open air without knowing. My flip phone buzzed. Another message, a little chain of bubbles. Kendra, can you confirm notary for Sunday? If we get the signature before dessert, I can grab a porch shot at golden hour. It wasn't for me. And there I was again, CC'd like a ghost who still gets mail. I pressed the side button, saved the screen, printed it. The printer whined and delivered the page like it had decided to be brave. I slid the new printout under the sugar bowl with the others and placed my palm over the stack. The wood under my hand was warm from the sun Ruth had let in on purpose when she opened those blinds every morning, no matter the season. I could hear the refrigerator cycle, the furnace kick, the kitchen clock tick its small work. You learn the sounds of your own life, and you know when a new sound doesn't belong. I called Luann. Tom's good people, I said. Did you pick a password? Gibson 58. She laughed. Of course you did. What's the plan now? Plan, not panic, I said, and wrote it at the top of the next clean page. Tomorrow I find a lawyer who drinks coffee and likes paper. Cheryl Patel's office sits in a Hiawatha strip between a nail salon and a trophy shop that etches little gold plates for Little League. The waiting area smelled like toner winter coats and burnt coffee that had been braved too long. A space heater ticked against the wall under a framed law diploma from the University of Iowa. On her desk sat a jar of black pens, a yellow pad turned sideways, and a coaster that said, "Keep calm and use paper." You Hal, she asked, stepping out in flats and a cardigan, brown hair and a practical braid. I'm the one who keeps receipts, I said, setting my shoebox on the chair. That's my favorite kind of client. She waved me in. Tell me the short version, then we'll measure twice. I gave her the short 5-year-old's parroted line, Mid-American tag, the bank prints from Tom, the clinic note where Dr. Ortiz wrote Oriented X3, the missent realtor messages about Sunday signatures, golden hour porch shots, and pre-list Monday. I laid each page face up and breathed like a man who has learned to pace himself. Cheryl listened the way a cabinet holds a hinge, steady, no squeak. She wrote dates and amounts in neat block letters, as if the facts were a route you could drive twice and then know blindfolded. When I finished, she tapped her pen once on the pad. Okay, she said. We're going to do 3 things. They are boring. Boring keeps your house. I like boring, I said. 1, a revocable living trust. You stay trustee while you're able. You name successor trustees who are not your son and not your daughter-in-law. I recommend 2 signatures required for big moves so no one rides solo. Luann across the street, I said. She's got 2 good eyes and a better pencil. And you. Happy to be the cranky second key, she said, half smiling. 2, a transfer on death deed recorded at the Lynn County Recorder. That means when you die, the house goes where you say without a court dance. Until then, no one sells your porch out from under you. And 3, we lock everything back under your hand. Turn off any auto pays you don't recognize. Put paper statements back on the porch. Add a verbal password. Tom did that already. Turn on 2-factor at your IRA custodian so a text hits your flip phone for anything big. Freeze your credit at the bureaus. We make your money deaf to anyone else's voice. She flipped a clean sheet of yellow. Now evidence. We're going to stand on the kind that doesn't blush. The child's line matters to your heart, but judges and bankers like paper. You've got it, utility notice and reversal bank prints, missent text clinic note. No secret recordings. If your doorbell captures people on your porch, that's yours. Otherwise, we keep sound out of it. I don't want tricks, I said. I want locks. Good, she said. My favorite legal advice is also my favorite carpentry advice plan. Don't panic. She worked with the speed of someone who has done this 100 times. She slid a form my way. Name your trust. Mercer Living Trust, I said, and the words steadied my breath like I just found my own front step in the dark. We listed the house with the full legal description from an old deed I'd kept behind Ruth's recipe for meatloaf. We listed my checking and a small savings. For the IRA, we didn't retitle. We updated beneficiaries and added a note about 2 signatures for any transfer above a threshold. We can't bind the custodian to that rule, she said, but we can build the habit around it, and Tom can put a flag. She printed the trust and a short memorandum of trust, the piece we could show, without giving the world our whole pantry. This tells folks you have a trust in who the trustees are, she said. They don't need the recipe, just the label. She called her runner to pull a TOD deed template, then dialed the recorder to confirm walk-in hours. They take cards or checks, she said. Your pick. Check, I said. Cards feel like borrowing air. Next, let's make a list you can do without me, she said, drawing a box with 4 lines. Credit freeze at the 3 bureaus. Tom already did alerts. Call your IRA and add 2-factor text to your device. Remove any convenience signer from sub-accounts. I shifted in the chair. Years ago, Brent was on a little holiday fund when we redid the deck. I left him on because we never used it again. Take him off, she said. Not as punishment, as fitness. Keys fit locks, signatures fit accounts. We made calls. I said Gibson 58 to two different people and enjoyed the tiny pause on the other end. I listened to hold music that sounded like somebody rubbing a balloon with a sweater. We set two-factor on the IRA. The flip phone buzzed and I typed the code. We took Brent off a sub-account with a single calm sentence, "I'm consolidating under my name only." The teller said, "No problem." Mr. Mercer, like it was a coat I decided to wear myself. Cheryl slid a brochure. "Safe deposit box," she said. "Put originals there. Keep copies at home in a binder. Paper at the bank and paper at the table." Ruth kept recipes under the sugar bowl, I said. "I've been keeping life that way." "Then we'll keep going," she said. We planned Sunday with the precision of men who pack trucks before dawn. "Invite Denise Krause, mobile notary," Cheryl said, tapping a card. "She's neutral and steady. Tell your family you're updating paperwork at dinner, so everyone brings IDs. Ask Pastor Rick and his wife Carol to stop by for a blessing on a memory shelf or whatever fits your truth. They serve as witnesses with eyes nobody questions." "Not a trap," I said. "A table," she said. "You're hosting." We walked through the sequence until it lived in my bones. Dinner first, grace first. I wouldn't sign anything they brought. I'd open my folder trust memorandum, TOD deed. Denise would verify IDs and stamp my pages. If anyone asked about a POA, I would say what we practice. I don't hand out keys, I keep them. Cheryl handed me two fresh manila folders. "Put their packet in one and set it near your place," she said. "Put ours in the other and set it near the end of the table. When trouble looks left, you'll reach right." She looked down my list. "Last thing, start a 529 for Aiden at your credit union. It teaches you something when the gift skips the hands that ask for it." I smiled without showing teeth. I like teaching. On my way out the trophy shop, Guy flipped his sign to closed and dragged in a rack of plastic bats that clacked like memories. The nail salon's door chimed and released the smell of acetone and laughter. Winter light slapped the parking lot. I drove to Collins and rented a safe deposit box that hummed when the door shut. Someone designed that hum to tell you a thing was finished. Back home, I spread Cheryl's papers on the dining table and read them slow. I practiced saying each title out loud so my voice wouldn't hitch when it mattered. Mercer Living Trust, Memorandum of Trust, Transfer on Death Deed. I wrote a one-page boundary letter in plain words for after Sunday visits by text a day ahead. No keys, no changes to bills, money talk in writing only. My phone buzzed. "Taryn again, bring your ID Sunday so we can finish the POA. Kendra wants to peek after dessert." A follow-up ping from Kendra herself, "Golden hours at 5:12. If we can get him by, then we're set." I pressed the button, saved the screens, and printed. The printer made that brave whine and spit the truth in black on cheap white. I slid the prints under the sugar bowl and set my palm on the stack until the paper warmed. Then I pulled the chuck roast from the fridge, rubbed in Ruth's spice mix, and set it in the pan. The oven door squealed like a friend who's heard secrets before. When the roast began to smell like Sunday, my doorbell chimed. Lou Ann stood there with a spiral notebook and a stubborn grin. "I'm early," she said. "Early wins." "Come set a place," I said. "We've got a table to build." Sunday morning smelled like weak church coffee and powdered sugar. I shook hands in the fellowship hall while kids slid on their sock feet across the linoleum. Pastor Rick stood by the big silver urn with a stack of foam cups and that half smile he wears when he knows something's brewing and he's waiting for the tea to steep. "You got that memory shelf built?" he asked. "I've got a table set," I said. "Could use grace around 5:30 if you and Carol aren't busy." He rested a hand on my shoulder. "We'll stop by. I'll keep it short and true." Carol leaned in. "Do you want me to bring a dessert?" "Bring eyes," I said, "and ears that hear what's meant." Back home, winter sunlight laid itself flat across the dining table, like a drop cloth. I ironed Ruth's good tablecloth the way she taught me knows of the iron first steam, where the wrinkles fight. The iron hissed and left a narrow line of order. I set out the plates, the stoneware that looks like it could take a punch and still hold potatoes. Forks on the left, knives on the right. I used the napkins she'd folded into rectangles that make any meal look like it was planned. Two manila folders went on the credenza just inside the dining room, unlabeled twins that didn't match once you lifted the flaps. On the left, the packet Brent kept flashing, the glossy power of attorney and its cousins, the guardianship light they'd printed from some website that calls itself a law office because it owns a font. On the right, Mercer Living Trust, the memorandum of trust, the transfer on death deed to record Monday morning, and the acceptance pages for successor trustees, Lou Ann Becker and attorney Cheryl Patel, 2 signatures for big moves. I slid a fresh black pen across the top of my folder and set a small stack of IDs on the corner. My driver's license, my Medicare card, so Denise the notary wouldn't have to ask me for them twice. I put the recorder's fee check in a white envelope and wrote Lynn County Recorder in block letters Ruth would have corrected for slant. Next to it, I laid my journal, the yellow pad now on page 3, dates, amounts, names, and 1 line at the top. Plan, don't panic. I pressed my palm on the pad and felt the grooves where the pen had cut, proof that the hand had done its work already. The chuck roast went in at $2.50 with carrots, onions, and a bay leaf because Ruth said, if you're going to pretend to be fancy, at least find a leaf that smells like a story. The oven door squealed and shut. Heat pushed out and made the cold windows sweat. My phone buzzed. Brent, we'll come early so we can get Dad's signature before dessert. Kendra might swing by for a quick porch pick if the light's good. The words sat there like a boy testing a fence with his boot. I typed, we've got a notary coming by. All above board. See you at 5. I didn't pick a fight. I set a post. Another email landed with a cheerful ping meant for someone else. Kendra Colpike, Brent Taryn CC me by accident. Lockbox install Monday AM. If we hit signatures tonight, I can draft the pre-inspection schedule. The PDF attached were a sash of charts and a photo of my porch with a circle drawn around the maple stump. Great curb appeal if staged with lanterns. I printed it and laid it under the sugar bowl the way Ruth kept recipes that mattered. At 3, Lou Ann knocked and didn't wait for me to say come in. She wore a cardigan with a row of tiny snowmen and carried a spiral notebook. I'll sit in the corner and write, she said. If I cough, it means you're about to over-explain. Cough early then, I said. I talk when I don't want to be misunderstood. Let the paper talk, she said, and sat in the dining room chair with the best view of both manila folders. I called Denise Krause, the mobile notary Cheryl had recommended. 5:25. Okay, she asked. Her voice had the steady flatter of someone who stamps for a living and leaves feelings at the door. Perfect, I said. We're just updating paperwork. ID ready. Clean table. No drama. She chuckled once. There's always a little drama, Mr. Mercer. I bring a stamp, not a gavel. At 4, I texted Pastor Rick our address again and told him the roast would be done at 5:10. He sent back a thumbs up and a line truth and mercy, short and true. I wiped the counters with a hot cloth and lined up salt and pepper in those little glass dishes that clink when you touch them. I set a bowl for rolls and wrapped them in a towel so the heat would have something to do while it waited. The percolator knocked, then burbled, then settled into its familiar tick. The house hummed like an appliance you forget to be grateful for. At 4:42, Taryn, we're 5 out. The doorbell camera showed their SUV nosing up to the curb in the blue light just before dusk. I watched the porch on my phone as they came up the walk. Brent looked past the door like men do when they're trying to see their future through wood. Taryn adjusted her scarf and her smile at the same time. They stopped on the mat Ruth had picked because it didn't shed. The doorbell cam caught it all my porch. My door, my little round lens with a tiny chime that sounds like a spoon on a teacup. Taryn leaned into Brent, voice low and clipped. When he signs, we're calling Kendra. I want that offer in tonight. Brent glanced at the street, then at the camera like he remembered too late that eyes live here. Just keep it smooth, he said. Don't spook him. I tapped save on the screen with my thumb. The clip dropped into the file with the others labeled by time like a clock had put its name on their plan. I felt nothing dramatic, just the small rightness you feel when a screw seats without stripping. I slipped the phone into my pocket and opened the door. Smells good, Brent said, stepping into the heat and blinking like men do when light meets them honest. Roast, I said. You brought your IDs. Taryn lifted her purse. All set. We can do Dad's POA before Pastor gets here. The notary's coming right. She, as I said, and let the sentence stand on its own legs. Aiden burst in around their knees and ran his hand across the back of the couch like kids do when they want to touch home without making a big deal of it. He pointed at the Candyland box on the coffee table. Can we play after dinner? We'll see, I said. We've got a few grown-up pages to read first. Lou Ann coughed once from the dining room corner. I didn't explain. Taryn put her folder, the glossy one, near my place. Sign here, here and here, Hal. This is just standard stuff so we can help if something happens. I set her folder on the credenza left side. The paper made a soft slide. I set my folder right side closer to the end of the table where Denise would stand. The paper made the same sound. Twins if you weren't paying attention. The oven timer beeped. I opened the door and let the smell announce that Sunday had arrived. Pastor Rick and Carol came in with the cold. He took my hand with both of his eyes, kind words short. Grace, when you're ready, he said. Carol kissed the air near my cheek and squeezed my arm like a clamp that knows just how hard to hold. At 5:25, a knock that belonged to someone who believes in appointments. Denise stepped in with her gray cardigan and her soft zip pouch hair pulled back to keep it from the stamp. She nodded to everyone in a way that neither asked nor promised. Taryn brightened like the porch light had come on. Perfect timing, she said. We'll notarize Dad's POA and then get out of your hair, Denise. Denise smiled, neutral as a countertop. We'll notarize what Mr. Mercer puts in front of me, she said, pleasant as a handshake. I poured coffee. I set the sugar bowl within reach. I felt the phone in my pocket like a flat, warm stone and knew the clip sat there quiet, ready to speak if it had to. I looked at the table I'd set, plates, napkins, 2 manila folders, salt, pepper hands I've known all my life, and one stamp I've only met in stories, and thought, plan, don't panic. Grace first, then the paper, then the stamp. The doorbell camera, still pointed at the dark porch, glowed in my pocket. I tapped the screen once to wake. It saw the paused frame of Taryn's mouth forming the word signs and slid the phone back in. I set the roast on the trivet. I pulled my chair out. I breathed in slow and plain. Let's eat, I said, then we'll read. And after dessert, we'll see who brings which paper to which stamp. We ate like polite people do when the room is already arguing without mouths. The roast fell apart under a fork. Carrots went soft at their edges. Aiden asked for more rolls and used his fingers like tongs. Pastor Rick told a quick story about a guy who salted his driveway with birdseed and made the squirrels rich. Taryn reached for her folder twice and set it back down twice like she was training a dog that wouldn't stay. When the plates cleared, I poured coffee. Denise, the notary, set her pouch on the buffet and unzipped it with the same calm you use to open a hymn book. She laid out her stamp and black journal. We'll need valid ID for anyone signing, she said. I'll note it on the log. Taryn slid her glossy packet toward me, pen already uncapped. Let's knock this out. Sign here, here, and here, Hal. It's standard. If something happens, Brent and I can help without red tape. I kept my hands flat by my cup. Before I put my name on anything, I said, Pastor, would you say grace? He didn't bow his head so much as tip it like he was listening for something he already knew. Lord, keep us true and keep us kind. Let us say what we mean and mean what we sign. Amen. He glanced at me, a small nod that felt like a green light. I picked up the other folder, the one I'd set near Denise's elbow, and opened it so the titles faced the room. We're not doing a POA tonight, I said, steady as a plumb line. We are doing this. Denise leaned in to read without opinion. Mercer Living Trust, she said, not quite out loud. Memorandum of Trust, Transfer on Death Deed, Successor Trustee Acceptance. Taryn blinked like a flash had gone off. What is all that? Paper, I said, the boring kind that keeps a house. Brent frowned, lids heavy, the way they get when a man has bet on a hand and sees the wrong cards. Dad, we just want to make things easier. Easier isn't a plan, I said. This is... I slid the memorandum of trust in front of Denise. I'm trustee while I'm able. If I can't be Lou Ann and Attorney Patel step in together, 2 signatures for big moves. No one rides solo. Lou Ann in her corner wrote the words, 2 signatures big enough to see across the table. She coughed once. I didn't explain. Denise nodded. IDs, I handed mine. She compared photo to face and wrote the number in her log with slow, neat strokes. You understand what you're signing, Mr. Mercer? She asked the question a notary asks, because the law requires, and because life does too. I do, I said. I read every line this afternoon until the paper got warm. Taryn pointed at her packet. This is standard. Families do this every day. It just says we can sign checks if you're sick. Standard for whom, I asked. Your realtor, your lockbox schedule. Her lips thinned. What realtor? I reached into my shirt pocket and set down the printed email Kendra had missent the one with my porch circled and golden hour circled again. Then the group text with, if he signs Sunday, we can pre-list Monday. Then today's ping about lockbox install Monday AM. Paper slid, paper stopped. Denise's eyes tracked the dates like train cars. Pastor Rick and Carol read in silence the way church folks read when a hard truth is sitting on the plate and nobody wants to spill it. Brent didn't touch the pages. Those are out of context. That's what people say when paper refuses to apologize, I said. Taryn laughed a tiny laugh that had no humor in it. He's confused. He thinks, don't tell the notary I'm confused, I said, and my voice was still kind. Tell the paper. Denise kept her face quiet. Mr. Mercer, which document would you like to sign first? The memorandum of trust, I said, sliding it to the center. Then the successor acceptance, because I like to know who's holding the other key. Then the deed. Brent bumped the table with his knee. The spoon in the sugar bowl chimed like a caution bell. He reached for my folder and stopped because Denise's hand was already there, holding the top page down with 2 fingers that had stamped more truth than this table would ever see. IDs for witnesses, she asked. Pastor Rick and Carol, I said. They'll witness with their eyes, not their opinions. Pastor and Carol came around the table, signed their names where Denise tapped, then stepped back like people taught to give space. I took the pen the way you pick up a tool you respect. I signed my name the way I learned to sign it on paychecks and Little League permission slips, and the card when Ruth was too sick to hold a pen. Denise watched the tip make the line and then place the stamp. Thump, click. The sound had weight and a little music in it, like a hand to a shoulder that says, you're not alone. Taryn flinched. This is ridiculous. You're making it harder for everyone. Hard isn't the same as wrong, I said. Denise slid the next page. Lou Ann leaned forward and signed the acceptance for successor trustee. Her hand didn't shake. 2 signatures, she said again, like a little prayer. Denise stamped. Thump, click. Attorney Patel accepted this afternoon by email, I said. We'll ink the hard copy in the morning. Brent tried a different angle. Dad, what if something happens to you tonight? How do we pay the furnace guy? How do we call Mid-American? You're making us beg strangers to help our own family. I tapped the memorandum of trust. This says who talks to whom and when. Tom at the credit union has a verbal password. The furnace guy gets a check with my name on it until I can't write one, and then Lou Ann and Cheryl write it together. There are paths that aren't you. His face closed like a slow door. Denise set the transfer on death deed where the light hit it cleanest. This one is acknowledgement only tonight, she said. Recording is Monday. I can notarize the signature now. I signed. The stamp landed. Thump, click. The bowl of rolls gave up a quiet, yeasty breath like the house exhaled. I reached into my pocket and set my phone by the salt. One more piece of paper, though it happens to live in a glass rectangle. I tapped and brought up the doorbell clip from 20 minutes earlier. The porch, the twilight Taryn's scarf. Brent's eyes, their voices in the air we all share. Taryn's mouth on the screen. When he signs, we're calling Kendra. I want that offer in tonight. Brent's reply. Don't spook him. I didn't look at them while it played. I looked at Denise, whose face didn't move. At Pastor Rick, whose eyes closed for the space of one slow breath. At Carol, who reached for the back of my chair without touching it. At Lou Ann, whose pencil stopped on the word offer like it had run into a nail and chosen to rest there. I locked the phone, slid it away, and folded my hands. That clip lives on my porch. It's mine to play. It will not live online. We're not here to shame you. We're here to be clear. Brent's voice got small. We just wanted certainty. You had it, I said. You just wanted control. Silence took a chair. The house hummed. Somewhere the percolator ticked down to quiet. Denise capped her pen and closed her log. She held out her stamp with both hands the way people hold a gift they didn't wrap, they're just delivering. Anything else, she asked. Yes, I said, and slid Taryn's glossy packet back across the table. Edge-aligned corner square. I turned it so the signature lines pointed at her, not me. This one isn't mine to sign. Nobody moved. The stamp's echo hung in the room like a last note that doesn't want to leave. Taryn left with her folder hugged to her ribs like a life jacket that wouldn't float. Brent stood in my doorway, too long, eyes darting like a man looking for a sign that isn't there. Aiden climbed onto my knee with a sticky roll in his fist and asked if we could play Candyland now. Pastor Rick put a hand on my shoulder and said, short prayer. I nodded. Thank you for truth told in small rooms, he said, eyes open. Help us live with the paper we signed. He squeezed my arm and stepped back. Carol hugged the air near my cheek and pressed a foil-wrapped square into my palm. Brownies, she said, for the after. Denise zipped her pouch and gave me a receipt with her seal number written neat and square. You've got what you need, she said. Record that deed in the morning. She looked at Brent and Taryn without blinking. Good night. When the door clicked, the house took a breath. Luann wrote one last line in her spiral and tore off the page. Put this with your trust, she said. In careful block letters, 2 signatures for big moves. No keys, no changes to bills. She coughed once. That's for you, too. Brent cleared his throat. Dad, maybe we got ahead of ourselves. Maybe, I said. We were trying to make sure we called it pre-inspection and lined up a lockbox for Monday. I'm sorry. You were trying to make sure the house had a lockbox on Monday morning, I said. I heard you say it. My porch heard you, too. Taryn's mouth went thin. We don't need a sermon. Good, I said. I don't preach. I sign. They stepped into the cold without another word. The porch light found their backs and made 2 long shapes across the walk. I shut the door and leaned my head against it, the way you do when you're grateful for wood. Aiden tugged my sleeve. Grandpa. Not tonight, I said, kissing his hair. We'll play next time. He nodded like a boy who believes in next time. Brent took his hand and led him down the steps. At the sidewalk, Aiden turned, held up 2 fingers and grinned. 2 signatures. The kid catches everything. I slept like someone had turned the hum in the house back to its right setting. Monday, the Lynn County recorder smelled like floor wax and old carpet. A TV on the wall showed a weather map with blue arrows that didn't agree with the sky. A vending machine rattled coins, who were trying to be more than they were. Behind the glass, a clerk with a crocheted scarf nodded me forward. Recording, she asked. I slid the transfer on death deed and my ID across the counter. Yes, ma'am? Mercer, house on K Avenue. She checked the legal description, compared my ID to the signature, and fed the page into a machine that hummed like a church organ with only 1 note. A red digital counter ticked up a number. She stamped the corner with a square date. The stamp bit a little deep and left a clean bruise in the paper. Recorded, she said, tearing a receipt from a dot matrix printer that could have been my cousin from the noise. She stapled the receipt to a copy and slid it back. You're set. I put the copy in a manila envelope I had labeled at home in block letters. The envelope slid into my briefcase like it had been waiting for that pocket. At Collins Community Credit Union. Tom lifted a hand when I walked in. Morning, Mr. Mercer. He took me to the little glass office again. How'd Sunday go? Boring as a snow shovel, I said. Thank you. He grinned. Best kind. We added the trust as an interested party where it made sense. He toggled an alert for in-branch withdrawals above a certain number. He double-checked my verbal password in the system. Gibson 58, he said, a little reverent. We printed a little list of my flags and taped a copy to my folder. You're a favorite kind of member, he said. You show up with dates. I called my home insurer from the parking lot and added the Mercer Living Trust as an additional interest. The woman on the line read the name back to me twice like she was fitting it into a box on her screen and liked how it sat. We'll mail an endorsement, she said. Keep it. I keep everything I said. Back home, I wrote a boundary letter in language that could pass any porch test. Visits by text day before. No keys. No changes to bills or services. Money talk in writing, not by phone. Contact Tom at Collins or Attorney Patel if you need clarity. I printed 2 copies, signed mine, and put the other in an envelope for Brent with his name written slowly so I wouldn't press too hard and make grooves I'd regret. I set it on the credenza with the others where the important papers live now. Pastor Rick texted, proud of you. Paper is mercy sometimes. I thumbed back a simple thanks and a picture of the recorded deed receipt. An email chime from Kendra Pike. I'd sent her broker a short note in the morning, do not contact me about listing or showings. Any representation request regarding my property must be made in writing to my attorney. Kendra's reply came through like a person who suddenly remembered the rules in a room she thought was hers. We will not contact you again. Best wishes. I printed it and clipped it to the missent emails with a paper clip that made a small, brave sound. By late afternoon, a whisper went through our little circle. Carol posted a neutral line in the church group. Paperwork last night wasn't what folks expected. All above board. Proud of clear boundaries. Men I'd known since the plant days sent thumbs up. One wrote, "Good on you, Hal." Another, "Boring wins." At 4, Brent's truck pulled in slow like the driveway might bite. He came to the door alone. No folder this time. He held his hat in his hands. "Can I talk a second?" he asked. "You can," I said, keeping the storm door between us, because rules teach best when they touch the world. He looked at the metal and nodded like he understood English for the first time. "I'm sorry," he said. The words fought a little on their way out. "We got greedy. We told ourselves it was for the best. The house? It felt like it was already half ours, and that made us act like it was." "It isn't," I said. "I know," he said. "I know now. Can we? I don't know. Can we try again?" I handed him the envelope. This is where try starts. He opened it and read the bullet points, lips moving like a boy learning a poem. He nodded at each line. "We can do that," he said. "No keys, fine. Text the day before, fine. Money talk in writing, only, fine." "I'm not mad," I said. "I'm done with chaos." He looked up. "What about Aiden?" "I started a 529 this morning," I said. "College Savings, Iowa. I put a little in to open it. Monthly small but steady. It belongs to Aiden. You can't pull it out for a family emergency. That's really your truck. When he's 18, we'll talk about trades or college. That's where my help lives now." His face cracked and something honest walked through. "That's good," he said. "That's right." I went to the credenza, pulled the memorandum of trust, and held it so he could read the top line again. Trustee, Harold Mercer. "You want one more chance," I said. "Start with respecting a signature." He swallowed. "Yes, sir." "Aiden can come Saturday," I said. "Bring a Hy-Vee pie, no paperwork. We'll play Candyland and he can gloat when he gets Queen Frostine. Text me Friday to confirm." He put his hat back on, like his head finally felt cold. "I will," he said. He took the boundary letter like a man takes a tool he doesn't love, but knows he needs. He stepped off the porch and didn't look back, which is its own kind of respect. Inside, I called Collins again and asked Tom to help me set up the 529 contribution recurring on the 15th. He guided me slow. "Do you want to name a successor owner?" he asked. "Lou Ann," I said. He chuckled. "Good pencil." Dinner tasted better than food has a right to on a Monday, just reheated roast with Ruth's paprika, waking up again. I ate at the small end of the table and left the head empty, because grief and victory both need a seat of their own for a while. Outside the porch, light clicked on with the timer. Through the glass, I could see the maple's dark shape holding its place against a sky that didn't care about papers or promises. The house hummed. The clock ticked. The sugar bowl sat heavy over prints that told a story without adjectives. The phone buzzed. A photo from Brent Aiden with 2 fingers up and a grin full of jam holding a Hy-Vee pie box like a trophy. Saturday at 10, I typed text Friday and put the phone face down. I washed the plates and set them in the rack with space between so air could do its work. I wiped the table and left the streaks to dry on their own. Then I took the deed copy and slid it into the safe deposit envelope. The paper made that small, brave sound again when it slid home like it knew where it belonged. 6 weeks later, the snow melted in lacy patches that looked like a map of places I didn't plan to go. Saturday morning, I parked by Nubo City Market and walked slow past the stalls. Kettle Corn Honey, a man selling cutting boards, sounded so soft they made you want to pet them. A busker with a harmonica found the exact note the building wanted and held it. I bought coffee in a paper cup that burned my palm just enough to remind me I held something. Early wins, Lou Ann said, appearing at my elbow with a muffin and the spiral notebook she carries, even on days when nothing official is happening. "Early wins," I said back. "We found a bench near the door where people come and go like clock hands." A couple from church waved. An old plant buddy named Ray patted the back of my shoulder and said, "Heard you did some paperwork." I said, and we both grinned, like men who know boring saved more roofs than drama ever did. Lou Ann tore the muffin top off and passed it over without asking. "How's the 529? "Set to draft on the 15th, I said. "Small but steady." She nodded, satisfied. "My dad used to say the same about fence posts. You set them plumb and let time do its job." A young reporter I'd seen at a school carnival walked up Mike, nowhere in sight, hands in pockets. "Mr. Mercer, off the record, my aunt's got a son who says she's forgetful. He keeps moving her bills around. I told her to get paper." "Tell her to put a trusted contact on her accounts," I said. "Tell her banker a password only she knows." If the son wants to help, he can sit next to her, not in front. The reporter nodded serious like a boy at his first funeral. Thanks, he said, and melted back into the market hum. On the way out, I bought a jar of pickles Ruth would have declared too sweet. I drove home with the radio low and the heater on my ankles. At noon, Brent pulled up with Aiden and a Hy-Vee pie balanced like a trophy. No folder, no extra faces. He texted from the curb like the letter said and waited until I opened the door before he stepped onto the porch. Afternoon, he said, hat in hand. Afternoon, I said, and the storm door stayed between us a beat longer enough to remember the rule enough to respect it. Then I pushed the latch and let them in. We sat at the table and ate pie that tasted like grocery store sugar and apology. Aiden wiped jam across his cheek and didn't care. After plates, we opened Candyland. He dealt like a man who'd been promoted. I pulled a card with 2 blue squares and made a noise I hoped sounded like defeat. He laughed so hard he coughed. Queen Frostine, he yelled 2 turns later, slamming the card like an ace. He moved his little green man across the board and made trumpet sounds with both lips. Brent watched his son and not the room. That was new. That was good. Grandpa Aiden said, "Did you know the licorice makes you skip a turn if you land on it?" "I know now," I said. "Thank you for telling me." I looked at Brent and said nothing on purpose. Some lessons are better when a 5-year-old delivers them. They left before dusk because I asked them to. Brent hugged me one-armed on the porch, an awkward thing that meant more because it had edges. "Thanks for Saturday," he said. "Text Friday next time," I said. "I will," he said, and meant it. I could tell because there was no future tense promise in his eyes, just a plan. That night, the Knights of Columbus fish fry hummed like a gymnasium full of bees. I stood in line behind men in seed caps and women in sweaters with sparkly cardinals. The fryer popped. The tartar sauce came in little cups you had to peel like bad news. The raffle guy mispronounced half the names and apologized without stopping. I carried my tray to a long table and sat near the wall where you can see the door. Pastor Rick slid onto the chair across from me with a plate that could have fed a football team. "How's the quiet?" he asked. "Loud inside," I said. "Good loud, like a furnace working." He chewed, swallowed, and wiped his mouth with a fold of brown paper towel. Then he stood up with his cup in his hand and said to no one in particular, and everyone at once, "For those who keep asking what to do when family love gets tangled with family money, care is with someone, control is over them. Choose your side." He sat down like he'd merely announced the time. Folks around us nodded, the kind that comes from the chest, not the chin. A woman with silver hair and a Uni Panthers hoodie leaned over from 2 seats down. "That sentence right there," she said to Pastor, then to me, and a notary stamp. "That's all I needed last year." "Add a banker who likes paper," I said, "and a neighbor with a pencil." She raised her cup. "To pencils," she said. "To boring," I said, and we tapped the rims like 2 people who'd survived a small, ordinary storm and were grateful for gutters. Back home, the house smelled faintly of fryer grease and winter coats. I set the pie box in the trash and wiped the counter slow, because that's how you end a day without pretending it was different. I took the folder labeled light from the cabinet and set it on the table. I opened it and touched each thing like a catechism mid-American tag with the reversal letter. Tom's credit union prince, Dr. Ortiz's note that says Oriented X3, missent emails with circles around my porch, the memorandum of trust, Denise's tidy notary number, the recorder receipt with its square bruise, the boundary letter with bullet points that have a spine. I put my palm on the stack and felt the paper warm. Paper is not love, but it is a way to stay standing with the people you love. I stepped onto the porch. The maple held still black lines against a sky that couldn't decide between blue and the first thought of spring. The motion light clicked on and made its easy circle. Across the street, Lou Ann's television flickered that soft blue that says company without conversation. Somewhere a train leaned on its horn and then let go. I thought about you, whoever you are, sitting at a kitchen table that holds more than plates. Maybe you have a shoebox of bills and a phone that blinks without asking first. Maybe someone says for your own good and your bone's no different. I'm not your lawyer. I'm a man who learned that boring is a kind of mercy. Here's what I know plain, as I can say it, make a paper trail. Add a trusted contact at your bank or credit union. Turn 2-factor on for anything that can take what you can't replace. Put statements back in your mailbox if screens make lies look clean. If you want help, sit people with you, not over you. If someone pushes a pen across a table and talks about making things easier, ask yourself who it gets easier for. If this turned your porch light on, pass it to a neighbor who keeps their bills in a shoebox. Share it with a friend who thinks silence is the kindest answer when it isn't. If you want more plain stories where the stamp is louder than the speech and the ending tastes like peace instead of payback, subscribe and pull up a chair next time. Bring your stubborn. I'll put on coffee. I flipped the switch. The bulb hummed. The circle of light spread over the step Ruth had scrubbed for years with a brush nobody else could stand. I stood in it until the cold reached through my coat and reminded me I'm alive.